This week in PlayStation, we're talking about the possibility of Sony withholding PlayStation 6 information from Activision, established IP becoming console exclusives, and if you believe in PlayStation's multiplayer plan. We'll have all this and more because this is PS I Love You XOXO. I'm Greg, that's Janet, that's Bless, and you can get this show on patreon.com/KindaFunny. There you can watch us record it live, get it ad-free, and get dozens of monthly episodes of exclusive content. If you have no bucks to toss our way, no big deal. Support us on the Epic Games Store, Fortnite, Rocket League, or Fall Guys with the creator code KindaFunny. You can get PSI...
Love you.
No, it's because I do in the intro, I have it where it's PSILY, which of course then is the URL, but then in my head, I got to pivot from PSILY to expanding it. Like I think of like in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids when they used it to make the stuff big again. I got to make it big. I shrunk it down. It's like a dehydrated pizza in Back to the Future 2, and then it gets big.
See,
I got you back. I got you back. You get PlayStation I Love You, PS I Love You, XO, PSI for free and with ads without the exclusive content on youtube.com/KindaFunnyGames and podcast services around the globe. Thank you to our Patreon producers, Casey Andrew, Delaney Twining, and James Hastings. Today we're brought to you by BetterHelp, but let's start with a PSN message from you. Janet, how's moving going?
Oh, it's hell on earth. So I don't know how many, and I know what I was going to say, I get movers now. I don't get movers yet. I've fantasized about getting movers for a move. It's yet to happen. I thought ignorantly that this move would be so chill because I'm double dipping with my lease. Normally when I've moved in the past, it's been like, okay, you're out the 31st in one place to get in the first, it's a hot swap. You're cleaning everything out in one single day. I mean, obviously you're packing before then, but you're not actually moving anything over until the day of. This isn't the case. We have the new place leased. We're finishing up the lease here. So I'm like, okay, cool. We can drive over, drop off some stuff and then drop off some stuff again and then get the internet set up. And some of that is nice in that when we do that final, the U-Haul move on Saturday, it's like, oh, it really is just going to be like our desks, the Kallax, everything else will basically, maybe a couple, odds and ends, but everything else will be good. But basically what it does is imagine the stress of moving. What if you sat in that for 2 weeks? And it's awful. I mean, thank God I'm moving with Isaiah, obviously, right? My boyfriend Isaiah. So he's been doing some of that work. He stained the furniture, painted over it. Cause we had the basic IKEA plain wood color thing where it's
new place. We can't have the plain furniture anymore, Isaiah. Get the staining.
I always hate he had back in the day when I first moved in with him. He had those same. We just buy the same shit from IKEA again. Yeah. Those same nightstands, and I always hated that he didn't put any color on them because I felt like I was living in the beginning of when you start off in Animal Crossing, and you have the basic wood furniture.
Sure.
So luckily, he's there now working on who knows what, I don't know, building things or welding, getting the gas stove working. But I'm just moving all the time. So I hate that. I don't know. Let me know if y'all have done that before. How do you usually do your moves when you have moved? Do you move often? I'm moving all the time. I move every 3 years. I'm tired of moving. I would like to stay. I'm hoping to stay here for a while until we get a house, which will be a decade or so from now when the market crashes. So
I don't feel like I move that often. I've been here 16 years and I've lived in, if you want to count the first place where I lived on a floor with an air mattress, which I wouldn't, that was 9 months. That would be one, then another.
That's a long time.
Then another.
That's a long time for a floor and air mattress.
I'm sorry, you all moved it. I'm sorry, you guys moved to San Francisco, fucking rolling in your trust funds. All right, I'm in here barely able to make it.
I assure you gave me a bed at least.
I assure you, IGN wasn't paying shit. All right, so I had an air mattress and my tube TV. Right word? So there was that one. Then there was another one. Then another one. Then another one. So I've been in 5 places in 17 years.
Jesus.
Is that
What's
good or
that
bad?
an average?
I mean,
what's the average there? Someone do math.
I feel like that's a small amount of places in 17 years. But if you find a spot where it's this is a good spot, then
every 3.5 years, that's a move on average. So it's around what I'm at too.
Okay.
I think I'm moving about every 3-ish years.
I'm thinking about my moving situation in Seattle, where when I first became independent from my parents, right? first I was
emancipated.
At
13, you're like, I'm out.
I gotta go play my video games in some other house.
I'm gonna eat some Gushers for dinner. I'll see you later.
My Lunchables. But yeah, like when I first lived alone, when I was in Illinois, right? Like I was in a spot for like a good 9 months, and then I moved to Seattle with my sister, and then like I swear it was. I don't think we made it a year in any spot, right? Like we would make it to the end of a lease and then immediately move somewhere else because without fail at every single spot, they would jack the price up with the lease and we'd go, no. And then we move to the next spot and they would do this exact same thing over and over again. San Francisco was the first city I moved to where so far they've not jacked up the price of the lease. Yeah. And so like me and Michael have just been chilling and doing our thing. But in 4 years of living in Seattle, I must have moved like 5 times.
God damn, what a nightmare. Yeah. I wouldn't even unpack.
That would for that I would do movers. Like I could, and that was me like having not much money, right? And for the first few times, my sister had a great job. She was just as lazy as I am, if not more lazy. And so she would go for the movers. And then when I started moving into my own apartments in Seattle, I would pay for the movers as well. Like I'm like, fuck it, I'm not doing anything. And also I didn't have that much stuff. Like I would always be able to swing for the lowest amount of money possible, right? Yeah. Which they had a bottom, right? Of you would have to pay at least this many $100s to even get the service period. But I'm always hitting like the minimum hours taking to like move my stuff because like they're in and out in like an hour. It was
I mean that's the thing about it where it's like I have a photo of moving between place 2 and 3, and I was on the second floor. I had pushed the couch out the window, and I had a ragtag group of IGN editors catching it. And so when I came down to help them, I took a photo of them all through, and it's like Craig Harris and Sam Bishop and a bunch of people. And it was like, that's the photo I thought back on of just like, I can't do this to my friends anymore. And not even my friends, my work acquaintances.
That's my thing is I've decided that moving is my least favorite activity to do in this world ever.
Wow.
Yeah, like
it's pretty up there. Yeah,
it's
pretty
terrible. Rough. I've helped friends move. I've been hit up to like help other people move, it's always the worst. Without fail, like it feels like suffering. That's like my least favorite thing.
Well, it's just a fact. Like even with movers, I feel like when you get down to like moving from the last time here of like waiting on like a 1-800 junk person or just trying to take bags of trash out, or even when you're packing up the stuff for the movers. I don't do like the white glove. You do everything, right? Yeah. It's like that idea of just like, how is there more? How is there still more dishes, more video game swag, more just, and then you get down to just like the random ass stuff that would be in like a junk drawer that you just have all over the house. Like I got this handful of screws and this fucking dog toy and this thing. You're like, what?
That's why the only process is the purge.
Yeah, purging is not
for
sure.
Yeah, that's the thing.
And I like
with
that.
how I'm doing it, you get a lot more time to purge, but also it makes the process longer. Like me and Isaiah, we're basically pretty much doing all our own stuff like separately, and the communal stuff is just kind of like play it by ear, right? Like we've picked up some of the, I don't know, like, oh, I bought this whisk, right? It's like, we kind of just take that and make sure it's all gone. But like I'm picking up like in my clothes, whatever. And he's, I think, further along than I am because he's like, instead of I want to evaluate, I'm not evaluating, I'm just taking. I'll figure it out when we get there. I'm trying to do that ahead of time. And that's taken so much longer because I'm like, do I want this bobblehead from the San Francisco Giants race I did in 2019. It's like I held it for so long. Like, do I just keep it? Do I get buried with it? I'm like, what am I doing with it? I'm throwing it away. I think I'll probably give it to my dad. I mean, he likes that kind of like kitschy crap. So I'm like, maybe he'll like this. But it's like, then it's like, why did I have it for so many years? Just to, you know what I mean? But it's like it never served a purpose. It was just in the closet.
Yeah,
I'm breaking down.
I have this blue tub, like gigantic, heavy as shit blue tub that has come with me from when my parents split and I packed stuff up that I then took down to Missouri and then out here and all these moves. And it's got like my old yearbooks in it from like grade school. Like it's like the traveling shit that you would usually leave in your parents' attic. It's it's a bunch of newspaper clippings from articles I wrote both as a real reporter and then like as a kid. And it's like there's old school photos. It's just like, why do I still, and I can't bring myself to throw it away. Like, will I ever need my 6th grade yearbook again? Fuck no.
I still have a tub that has like my PS2 and like just a bunch of old game shit that I'm never gonna use.
See that, but I feel like the game stuff. I wish that my blue tub was my Master System. I wish it was all, and there is a long shot that that's all in my father's attic back in Illinois. But I go home so rarely that I don't feel comfortable being like, "Hey, Dad, I'm only here 3 days, and I'm gonna go to the attic. See you later." You know what I mean? Haven't been home in an entire year, and now I'm gonna go up here and dig around for like a rat.
That is one thing that I keep, though, Blessing, to your point of like the old consoles, because I feel like I've lost enough. There's been enough times in my life where I've bought old consoles again. I do think in our more modern era, the use case of like the older console is diminishing, like from a functionality of playing game standpoint. I mean, even if you look overall on the Nintendo side, like a lot of those, like some of these old hits are now like coming to NSO, and PlayStation just dropped their like old collection, which is a bit flawed. So obviously, like that's not a perfect system. But I've kept all this stuff. The only thing I'm getting rid of is I think I am getting rid of my Xbox One base, because I feel like it really is all the same games I can play on the Series X. But everything else, like the PS4, I'm still going to keep. I don't have PT on it or anything cool like that, but I'm like, you know what? I just don't want to be down the line buying an old PS4. I'm just going to keep it. I have a whole, that's all in one box. That's the other thing too, with the slow move, my boxes are actually going to make sense this move. They normally don't make any sense. It's like, oh, my PlayStation and also like all of my running socks mixed with a stuffed animal from childhood. Like it's nonsense. And then a mug so it doesn't break. This time it all makes sense, but again, taking longer. So I have a bin of like, it's the PS4, Isaiah's PS1, PSVR 1, rest in peace. PSVR 2 is in a separate bag, so it still has its life going. Oculus Quest 1 that I barely played, like that's like in a box, like nostalgic technology. My GBA, even though I have a modded GBA, it's like I just put that all together, and it just feels a little silly to keep technology as like a memory, but I don't know. It's also like a big
but it's
part
also
of gaming,
we've all been there. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
When you and I were playing Peace Walker when you first started in 2020, right? And it was like, all right, cool, break out the PS3. I'm gonna play Peace Walker here and get some trophies. And then it was like, all right, cool, I kept the PS3. I didn't keep any DualShock 3s. You know what I mean? Like, shit, fuck. Well, you can use this, but it won't have Rumble, but I got to do this. And it's like, oh, this is a fuck up on my part. And so now when I go into the basement and, like, it's the laundry shoved in the corner, right? And then over there is my, mountains of cables that are nicely organized. But then there are just the shelves of old shit. I look at that PlayStation VR 1, and I'm like, ooh, I'd love to throw you the fuck out. But I'm like, I know at some point I'm going to need you for something.
But like, will you?
I don't know.
Will you? Like,
I don't
my
know.
thing is like,
if fucking PSVR 2 is backwards compatible, maybe I wouldn't have to.
Do you want to put yourself in that bad situation where you end up being like, now I'm gonna rebuy back the thing? Like,
but
you
that's
already have it.
Like,
just
I
keep
feel like
it.
there are so many few consoles nowadays that you're gonna have to rebuy to do a thing. Like, what was the last time you picked up that PS3? It was probably Peace Walker, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That's a one Peace Walker session in like 4 years.
I mean, don't get me wrong. You
can't put a price on one
don't
Peace
get me
Walker
wrong.
session in 4 years.
Metal Gear
it's
Solid
invaluable.
Volume 1, the collector's, right, is out in October. And then today, while we've been doing Remember Blank, there was the thing of like, yo, they updated the site. They have these like dots or whatever in the source code that would indicate that Volume 2 is going to have not only Metal Gear Solid 4, free from the PlayStation 3. That is the rumor right now based on this. It's also going to have Peace Walker on there. And it's like, then it kind of is like, well, then what do I fucking care about this? I still have all my old photos on the PS3 because I use that as my media hub for a long time. Like, there's a lot going on that PS3.
Like, if I have a Steam Deck, I don't need my PS2. I can play all those games on Steam Deck.
Yeah.
I don't need a lot of this old shit. I don't need my Wii. Get rid of it. I might need my Wii. Actually, I might keep the Wii.
Yeah, give me the Wii.
Keep the Wii U because that's the only place you can play Wind Waker right now.
Have I not given back that Wii U?
I mean, it's the Office Wii U. I think it's technically Greg's Wii U.
I think
you are welcome to keep it. You are welcome.
Hell yeah, I got a Wii U. Let's go.
I assure you, I do not
time to play
ever
Wind Waker
need
each day,
excited to
that.
have a Wii U
Finally.
in 2023.
Yeah, it's never too late. A late adopter, Why
This
not?
is a Rick Rollin episode. We're having a lot of fun. I think this has been a great PSN message. But so even before we get to the topic of the show, I want to read this breaking news to you, all right? This is from IGN.com. Metal Gear Solid 4 finally freed from PS3 as part of leaked Metal Gear Solid Master Collection Volume 2. This is Wesley Yinpool. Konami just announced the contents of the Metal Gear Solid Master Collection Volume 1 due out this October. Now the internet has spotted the lineup for the games for the unannounced Metal Gear Solid Master Collection Volume 2. Twitter user Nitro ID spotted that inspecting the Metal Gear Solid timeline page on the official Metal Gear Solid website reveals placeholder buttons for Metal Gear Solid 4, Metal Gear Solid 5, and Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker. IGN understands this lineup for Metal Gear Solid Master Collection Volume 2 is accurate and has asked Konami for comment. While the entire collection will no doubt excite Metal Gear fans, it's the inclusion of Metal Gear Solid 4 that's of most interest. Kojima Productions' 2008 action-adventure stealth game has been shackled to the PlayStation 3 since launch, and with Metal Gear Solid Master Collection Volume 2 expected to launch on PC, PS5, Xbox Series X and S, and Nintendo Switch, an army of newcomers are set to experience Guns of the Patriots for the first time.
Hell yeah.
Fuck yeah.
That's awesome.
I can't wait for this collection, and I know I'm going to be disappointed. Because what I want, of course, is great trophies from it.
You're gonna get that.
Are they? But is it going to be the same lists from before? Is it going to be some weird shit bullshit? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
what do you want? Were those lists bad?
I mean, they took a lot of work. I wouldn't mind for these master collections, not maybe giving every.
What if it's 3 platinums?
Well, it'd be more. What do you do about the NES games? What do you do about Metal Gear Solid 1 and Metal Gear 1 and Metal Gear 2 and Snake's Revenge and all that?
Make trophies for those, yeah.
It could be really dope, is what I'm saying. You could have a really great collection in there, a really great collection of trophies.
So then, what would be your strat? Are you doing separate trophy lists for each of the games? Like, are you giving each game its own platinum?
Yeah.
Like each game in the collection?
Yeah, you are.
And you're creating new lists for that are more.
Well, I would want new lists, not more attainable. I don't need to be more attainable. I mean, I think so they ask a lot of you, but I want there to be a lot of bang for your buck in there.
I like that.
Okay,
that's exciting.
It is very exciting, but nothing official about Volume 2 yet. We'll get to it later. Instead, for now, let's start with topic of the show. Blessing. Oh, fuck. I had a joke. I forgot. I was going to say, by the way, that conversation was brought to you by Moving Out 2, releasing August 15th.
I was going to make a PS We Move You XOXO joke. I couldn't formulate it well enough, but we can stew on these and come back at the end of the show.
Do you ever think about how weird it is that somebody's moving? They're packing and moving while listening to that conversation about packing and moving. Think about that, Janet.
It's crazy.
Think about that, Janet.
Inception.
Probably Isaiah.
I can't stop thinking about it. Actually.
Okay, good. I'm glad. Topic of the show. There's a brand new episode of The Blessing Show up. It is, of course, titled PlayStation's Live Service Strategy Isn't Working. You can go watch this fantastic piece of content from Blessing and Roger over on youtube.com/kindafunnygames. Remember, The Blessing Show is here because you supported us on patreon.com/kindafunny, and that means you get this video-only program. But it was too good not to bring to PS I Love You XOXO. Because, of course, Bless, this is ripped right from the PlayStation Showcase, which, even though it seems like that happened a while ago, if you move yourself from the time loop that is SGF, it was pretty recent. We just haven't had a lot of time to talk about it with Janet, us, PS I Love You XOXO. Yeah. So you start this question of, PlayStation's live service strategy isn't working. Not even a question, I'm sorry. For this show, we're saying, do you believe in it, as we ask the audience and all this stuff. But to start with, in terms of your video, how fucking dare you, Blessing? How can you come in and say something like that? What it isn't working? It hasn't started yet. I am every YouTube comment. Hello.
Yes. I mean, when can I start
Block
to?
him. No, I'm just kidding.
When can I start to judge and critique what's going on with that? Right? Because I think the thing for me is that PlayStation has been talking about this live service thing and this multiplayer strategy for years, and we do have tangible things to talk about it. Right? When it is the Jason Schreier story breaking down what's going on with the Last of Us multiplayer game and how a lot of people have been taken off of that project, right? And a lot of that project's been stripped back and stripped down because a lot of those aspects aren't working as determined by Bungie's evaluation of what's going on in PlayStation's multiplayer projects, right? When you look at that, when you look at all of the information that PlayStation gave us in their business presentation they did right before that PlayStation Showcase, where they talk about their goals as a company, right? It was basically their end of fiscal year, beginning of fiscal year sort of presentation, talking about the budget that is going toward live service stuff as they're making that transition, right? And they're talking about the 60-40 split of 60% of our budget and effort is now being put into this live service push, right? That's big, that's meaningful, that is something tangible to talk about, right? Like it might not be Last of Us multiplayer game being here and being out and being able to review it or whatever, right? But I think stuff like that is tangible and we can talk about it in that way, right? And there is also the reception of that PlayStation Showcase when you're talking about the reveal of Helldivers 2, Marathon, Concord, Fair Games, and how lukewarm that was as both a PlayStation Showcase, but then also the PlayStation Showcase that is ushering in this push that PlayStation is making toward multiplayer and live service games. And then also you just look at all the stuff that we have on the table, right? Like we've been speculating about what these live service games are. We pretty much know what these live service games are if you pay attention. And I feel like we can talk about them. I think there's enough information out there to be able to determine where we're at in this journey toward live service. Me saying all this doesn't mean that I think Fair Games is going to be a bad game or that Marathon is going to be a bad game, right? I think these games can certainly come out and be great, but I think it's more of a conversation of, is this the right strategy for PlayStation? Is this the right move for PlayStation? And do these games have space to breathe when we're talking about what the live service games ecosystem looks like right now?
Jake Bakes Cakes writes into kindafunny.com/PSILY, just like you, Cannon says, hey, PSILY crew. Bless, you killed it again with the Blessing Show. Keep up the fantastic work.
Thank you. ...
But I disagree with you. Right now, all they've failed at is marketing, which shouldn't be a reflection on their strategy. PlayStation has had a disappointing showcase, yes, but I think that was due to the framing of the live service games. I think if we saw, to quote Jeff Keighley, raw gameplay for the 2 or 3 new games versus 3 generic CGI trailers, feedback would be different. Does this mean their live strategy is going to see guaranteed success? Absolutely not. Do I think everyone's perception of the strategy as of now would be much more positive? Absolutely. But I think it's far too soon to deem their strategy as faulty just because Jim Ryan got a little too excited and blew an empty load. Gross. P.S.
Yuck.
I do think the strategy is going to fail miserably, but I still believe what I wrote.
Yeah, I think we agree then. Like I'm right there with Jake Bakes Kicks then.
What a twist.
In that case of I don't think these games are necessarily going to be bad. Right? I think if we saw gameplay, then that would I think that would sit better with a lot of people. But the fact is we didn't see gameplay. Like the fact is that was something that they either didn't want to show or weren't prepared to show or didn't know how to show. And whatever the case, right? Like I think there's a problem there.
Do you think showing those or choosing to show or not to show those games was part of the strategy?
Yeah.
Which again, your headline is PlayStation's live service strategy isn't working, which encompasses
everything.
Both the marketing, how you talk about the games on a show, who you're partnering, it's everything.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Janet, do you think PlayStation's live service strategy is working or not?
No, because it hasn't. Well, it's a mixed thing, right? Because I do agree that on one hand, you do to a degree have to wait for the stuff to come out to like fully have the big picture. But at the same time, it's like that's the easiest time to make an evaluation. I think Blessing's episode and kind of taking a stance on it now as it is in a way like the bolder claim, right? Because it's like you actually have to like do deduction and come up with it and argue it. While no offense, but it's kind of pretty simple to look at something that failed and be like, this failed. And usually when people do that angle, they'll do why did it fail? And that'll be a different angle. So I think it makes sense for what Blessing's trying to put out there. Having watched the episode, I do pretty much agree with everything that Blessing pointed out. And I think bringing it back to Jake Bakes Cakes' comment, strategy, it's funny then that's why like the doc got all messed up because I bolded strategy to remember it. But like they only failed at marketing. That's not a reflection of their strategy. Like I think that's such a funny comment in the sense that like it absolutely is. Like so much I think of what we do here, which it's, our job is funny because we spend a lot of time like talking about stuff before it happens, and then we have like one episode about like the actual thing that takes a bunch of work. We'll play a game for like 8 to 80 hours, write all these notes, do an hour of content, and then we're like, boom, now it's done, and now the next thing, right? I think a lot of what we do in this field and what it means to be covering video games and following video game coverage is the sort of prediction and pontification and over-analysis of the bit of things that you can look at because, we can't play the game until the game's in our hands, which that part is very small. And then once it's out there, we cover it as kind of it, and I know people will debate that on like, oh, well, you should do longer form stuff or, we come back to end of the year stuff, but that's basically the flow of things. And yeah, it's been rough. I mean, I think to me, the biggest argument for this being kind of a rough start for this strategy or a struggling start for this strategy is just the way that I think the things that were most anticipative have been kind of not, I guess, dialed back or like reined in a little bit with The Last of Us stuff. And there's still the debate of, they say like, oh no, like we're not going to make anyone do anything, but like who told you that? They did. So it's like, it's like we aren't always fully privy either to those inner workings on how much is this coming from the right place? Is it coming from the right place? And will we be in too deep before it's too late? Will this conversation be funny to look at 5 to 10 years when we're like, oh yeah, this is when it all went south? Or, will it work out and really expand the portfolio?
Or will they
I think it's fair to be hesitant right now.
I think there's also a likely, no, I shouldn't say likely. There's also a possibility of them abandoning the strategy. Like, and I don't think that's like the writing's on the wall. They're going to do that, yada, yada, yada. But like, you see how video game industry, I shouldn't even say that. You see how the overall video game industry reacts to trends and reacts to these different things. Back to the headline, right, of PlayStation's live service strategy isn't working. I agree that it is not working because people, everything Blessing said, of course, yes, in the video, which again is fantastic if you go watch it, but it's the fact that the strategy is to get you hyped, you audience member, you, us gamer, to get hyped for live service games from PlayStation. And they have not done that, period. End of statement. And you can go into, well, that's marketing. It's more than marketing because it's happening outside of the marketing cycle. As you know, we talk about The Last of Us, right? We talk about Jason Schreier's reporting on it. You talk about that team being dwindled down. Jared Burke wrote in and said, "Hey guys, longtime fan. Do you think The Last of Us online game could turn the tides of PlayStation's online strategy? It seems Bungie is pretty knee deep on it as a supervisor, and they're really taking their time to seemingly perfect this game in regards to their vision. Do you think this will push PlayStation into the live service league, or do you think this focus will backfire and overshadow the Naughty Dog touch?" Thanks for all you do. Here's the thing. You're asking two different questions, I feel, in two different realities, Jared. Where do I think this game could turn the tide of PlayStation's online strategy? If we didn't know, or it wasn't apparently off the rails in some regard, or not, and I shouldn't even say all that, if it wasn't finding the fun, which really seems to be what we found out from the Jason Schreier thing, right? That this wasn't going to monetize the way they wanted to. It wasn't going to do this, shrink the team down, go from there. Then maybe, sure, if they were going to deliver a 10 out of 10 Last of Us online live service game, fuck yeah, that could totally turn the tide in terms of perception of this. But the fact that they've shrunk that team down, like, I still stand by what I tweeted. You will not be playing The Last of Us online game. I do not think that game ever makes it to you as a gamer. I think that, and again, 100%, of course not. I'm not saying that, but if I was a betting man right now, I would bet that game gets killed in the cradle before it ever gets anywhere. Because, oh man, to your point, Jared, right? Oh man, they seem to really be taking their time to perfect this game. I think they're taking their time trying to figure out what the fuck this game is and how do we make it fun and how do we monetize and like by the time and then Bungie comes in and looks at it apparently and was like, what my interpretation of that was, hey, you guys are right. Everything you thought is wrong with this game is wrong with this game. Okay, well, let's get everybody to the single player games we're working on, the IPs we're doing over here, whatever it is. Move this to another team of like, maybe you guys can find the fun in it. Maybe you can restructure it. Maybe you can figure it out. I think eventually you're going to go around long enough with that smaller squad and they're going to be like, maybe if we went this way, but it's not really worth it, we should just be Naughty Dog and make Naughty Dog games. All right, cool. That's done. Get over to that and go do those things. Yeah. I think that's what happens. And I think that speaks to this strategy not working. And I think it speaks to the fact that you come out of this thing and we see Concord, we see Fair Games, we see Marathon, we see Helldivers 2, which I'm excited for, but I'm excited for the past lineage of that. I think a lot of people are excited for Marathon for the fact that it's Bungie. I think there's different groups to get in there, but I don't think people who didn't have a history with those saw those 4 trailers and were like, fuck yes. These games look decidedly different. When I hear you explain that this one's a PvP heist game and this one's a PvP multiplayer FPS and this one's a PvP extraction shooter, no, that is not how this should be boiled down. These should be iconic. These should be different. These should be exciting. You should see them and be ready to go and be excited to play those.
Yeah. When we're talking about the Last of Us thing, right, and the question of, is that good enough to move the needle of what the perception is of PlayStation's live service stuff is, I think I look at two things. I look at Schreier's report where he talks about the Last of Us multiplayer video game, is facing setbacks at Sony, and some of it is, as reported, and this is from IGN, as reported by Bloomberg, the quality and long-term viability of the much-anticipated Last of Us multiplayer game has seemingly come into question. As a result, sources have claimed a small group remains on the project while the company reevaluates the direction. And then I jump over to the statement that Naughty Dog put out that same day where they wrote out, the Last of Us fans, we know many of you have been looking forward to hearing more about the Last of Us multiplayer game. We're incredibly proud of the job our studio has done thus far, but as development has continued, we've realized what is best for the game to give it more time. Our team will continue to work on the project as well as our other games in development, including a brand new single-player experience. We look forward to sharing more soon. We're grateful to our fantastic community for your support, yada, 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 right? I look specifically at that part where they say, our team is going to keep working on the project as well as the games you actually want from us.
Damage control, right? Which is I think the comment after this showcase. So Mega Buster right now in the live chat on Patreon says, the bad taste in my mouth after that showcase is that all of the new IP were multiplayer live service. So even though we get sequels to great single player games, the new IP focus is multiplayer. This is exactly what we were worried about when PlayStation said they were doing this, that this was going to be their push forward of like, okay, but why aren't you got to dance with the one that took you there, right? And you're there and you're like, now we don't want to be the single player. We don't want to be the narrative. We don't want to be the huge AAA game that you can only get here. That's clearly moving units and making people PlayStation fans. Mm-hmm. And to jump back in here, right? Matlock had written into kindafunny.com/PSILY like you can. It says, while I agree with almost everything Blessing said, I think lumping Marathon in with the rest is a disservice to it. Bungie genuinely and generally doesn't miss. And they're also technically aren't a PlayStation studio, which that's a little bit, they are a PlayStation studio. They're only a PlayStation, whatever. But to your point, I think lumping in Marathon in does it a disservice. Ding, ding, ding. That is the daily double. Yes, not only does lumping in do Marathon a disservice, it does Fair Games a disservice, it does Concord a disservice, it does Helldivers 2 a disservice. When you shove 4 games in there that are like, hey, this is what, and it's like, which one's the Haven? Okay, well, they're all PV, they're multiplayer. They're like, no, you can't come out and like, it's the same thing when we make fun of that Nintendo Direct from a few times ago where they were all fucking farming games.
Yeah.
You're like, well, yeah, they're all. I don't know which one are we talking about. The one where you're a fairy, the one where you're trying to date the guy. I don't know that. Well, they're all trying to date people. I don't. This is the thing of like, what is the identity of this? PlayStation's. What is your vision of it?
It's an identity that I think they're on the business side trying to dive all the way into, but on the public facing, let's continue to be PlayStation and retain that PlayStation shine side are having struggle with. And I think, again, I look at that last statement and it is very telling where they say, as well as our other games development, including a brand new single player experience. And you don't do that with your games, right? Like if any other studio, if Rockstar is about to promote Grand Theft Auto 6 coming up and Grand Theft Auto 6 needs to get delayed, they don't then come out and say, but don't worry, we're still working on it, alongside with a Red Dead game coming out years and years and years from now, right? Like you don't try to like protect the brand of one game and protect what's going on with that one game by then talking about a different game that's going to come out years beyond that, right? All focus and all excitement should be pushed toward Last of Us multiplayer if you really care and you're really confident with Last of Us multiplayer. And I sent the slides to Barrett. I think it's slide number 23. Yeah, slide number 23 that I want to bring up, and I talk about in the episode of The Blessing Show where it's 2 graphs that are right next to each other. One of the graphs is showing, the graph on the left is showing the growth of add-ons throughout the years in the games industry and how add-on content, talking about the live service post-launch content, is becoming a bigger slice of the pie. And then the right graph is the one talking about PlayStation's investment over the years and how in 2019 or FY 2019, 88% of PlayStation's investment has been in traditional games, right? Single player games, the stuff that we know PlayStation to be, right? But by FY 25, a couple years from now, they want it to be 40% of our investment in single player and 60% into multiplayer. There is like dollar signs moves being made based on what I think are pretty like simple graphs that have way deeper and way more complex stories going on behind them. But like there's dollar signs being seen that are, hey, we got to put way more money into this live service stuff because that is what's working, right? Meanwhile, you're downplaying the live service stuff on the front facing side and also having a struggle of showing that stuff off.
And doubling back to what you were talking about in the Blessing Show, right? It's the idea again that I feel like people jump on trends, and we've talked about it, and you talk about it in the show, right? Of like, look at Rumbleverse and Knockout City, and the list goes on of other games that jumped into. This is gonna be we're gonna not be Fortnite, but we're gonna ride that kind of lightning. We're gonna get a games as service, a live service game like that, and really get in there. And so, like when you look at all these different games from PlayStation and what we're seeing announced already, right? Of Fair Games, Concord, Marathon, Helldivers 2, which again aren't necessarily Fortnites, aren't necessarily Knockout Cities, aren't necessarily Rumbleverses. They are necessarily games that are trying to compete with a Diablo 4 of, hey, we want you to log on every night and grind it out and have a party and get ready for seasonal events and do all this. And it's like everybody, it seems right now in 2023, who are putting out games are getting the memo of like, oh shit, there's only so much time we can get anybody's attention. So are we really going to see Fair Games drop and it be like, this is it. This is the one. I'm all in. We're playing this for the next 6 months. And can you, if you can't, to the question or the statement, right, of like Marathon, it does a disservice to be tossed in there. It does all of these a disservice.
Yeah.
Because these can't all be
games
hits.
Can't all exist at the same time. Go for it.
At the same time, like I hope they know, but I feel like they know because they're doing it, right? Like you also need a lot of at-bats. So I think for me, the more worry is like to what degree could the single player identity be lost in the ambition of the long-standing like live service game? Because like not everything's gonna hit, most things won't hit, but you only get that way by taking a lot of at-bats. And if Marathon's the only one that comes out of it, that can be fine. But then there's that concern, I think, specifically with Blessing pointing to like the Naughty Dog kind of situation of it is like, to what degree is there a top-down pressure or even an internal pressure from the studio of trying to pursue this when it's not working? I think in a weird way, it's kind of a relief that the multiplayer thing isn't like, it's better. I'd rather it not come out than come out bad and hurt the brand and hurt the studio. So at the same time, though, like to the point, that is why we're having that conversation about it not working, because it's that struggle to get it off the ground. And that continues to be a struggle. And I don't know if they'll ever really like get what they want, which is having, you know, that be a big portion of their identity. And I think there is that risk of losing their identity in trying to expand who they are, that like things get muddied. I do think too, it's generally an uphill battle in the sense that the hardcore, in my mind, like the vibe I get from like the hardcore like players, and by that I mean like people that follow the news, that are like, you know, nerding out with us in the chat, stuff like that. There is that big passion for single player experiences, despite there being, you know, from a monetary standpoint, not as much juice you can get out of that orange, right? We know the stats. Most people don't finish the games that they start or play, and we've all done that, and we like do this for a living, you know?
Yeah.
So with like that live service bit, like you get a lot more out of it, but then there's also that push and pull of the second you worry too much about money is the second you kind of fuck up with your money too, where it's like you get too obsessed with pursuing the result, and now you're so results driven, you can't see like the other things going, you kind of get tunnel vision a bit. So I think that's really what's at risk. Like this definitely is like you got to spend money to make money or like to make good shit, but to what degree are you maybe losing the things you're good at because you're spending too much time trying to grow in other areas? I think really the concern for me, at least.
And also, like, you're spending so much time and so much money to throw things at the wall to see what works. You know what I mean? Like that, you need at-bats, I agree, but to come out, I would rather it be the at-bat is, hey, again, perfect world, it would have been Last of Us. That doesn't work, fine. Let's do it and just show you fair games and talk about why this game's great and show you what it is so you have time to get excited. Not so it looks completely disposable, tossed in with these other games there. Not so I sit there and go, okay, well, maybe 2 of these aren't going to work out or whatever. And then in the chat, you guys are killing it today on Patreon. What a bunch of great conversations. There's a great one here from Omega Bush that says, good point, Janet. Destiny wasn't great day one. Iteration and community feedback are critical over the years. And then he said, Omega Buster follows up and says, same for Final Fantasy 14. Final Fantasy 14 originally launched in 2010. Destiny 1 originally launched in 2014. You do not get that chance anymore. Look at Rumbleverse. Look at Knockout City. You have that. Look at Multiversus, the game that like you launch these things. You have to be a hit. You have to get the audience. You have to lock them in, and you have to keep those numbers up. The stuff we're talking about there, like especially for in general for video games right now in 2023, you need to have that install base. You need to go. It's why it's free to play. It's why it's cross-platform. It's why it's cross-progression. Let's have one giant community rather than splinter it off and have it be all fucked up, right? Beyond that, it is this idea that if you're PlayStation, if you're launching this new initiative, if you're trying all this stuff, you are going to, and when I say you, I mean your shareholders are going to want results immediately. And so if you launch these and 3 of them don't knock it out of the park and can get a huge audience and make a whole bunch of money off the battle passes and whatever else you're doing, they are fucking dead. And not only are they dead, you will then see die on the vine. The other, we're talking about 4 right now that are similar out there. Let's say there'd be 2 announced by then. The other 6, right? The other 6 that are going to be just like, fuck this strategy, we're out of here. This isn't working.
And then what happens to those studios that
they get fucking destroyed?
Yeah, or that are beloved for other things, and because the leadership of Sony really wanted to roll the dice on this idea, that like I'm really scared for the future of like a lot of these studios, man.
Yeah.
There was the great one from the Blessing show, right? Remember Deviation Games, that studio working with PlayStation on a new FPS IP? Well, it's been reported that they've suffered heavy layoffs, up to 90 members of the staff, which is crazy because when they announced their partnership, they were over 100 strong. I'm not good at math, but 100 minus 90 equals, I'm pretty sure that game is never coming out. Like, these are the bets. And this isn't me damning PlayStation. Like, you're a company and you need to compete and it's video games. These are the bets people are making, but they're making bets with people's lives. And so it is, we're going to get this studio, we're going to partner with you, and you're going to make this kind of game. And when they see the first 3 of those games not deliver, those last 3 that probably aren't even announced or whatever, don't know, they're fucking gone.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it comes back to the line that I had toward the end, right? Where, I mentioned that you can't treat this like a sprint if you want games like Marathon to be good, right? And I think
that was a good pun too.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Thank you, I appreciate it. Roger made me like tone it down because I think I had a different pun that was more like on the nose, and I was like, all right, I'll pull it back. But it's the idea
Thank
of
you, Roger.
I think.
Doing that good work. Hey, we don't need an editor. That's no shade. You know?
Of course.
He does good work. Love the yerba mates.
But he loves the yerba mate.
He loves them.
He put me onto the yerba mates, and every time I drink one, I'm like, I'm entering my Roger zone, and I'm like, time to do some edits. Like this is the time. But anyway,
Yeah,
but it's
Roger
that
zone.
full investment. It's that let's jump into the deep end of the pool all at once immediately and have all these things. And who knows if it's a top down thing? I think it's a top down thing because it is wild that all the PlayStation developers are hiring for multiplayer at the same time.
Yeah,
but
we all just got in the mood to hire.
Maybe everyone's passionate about multiplayer. You know, like I mean, Ghost Team of Legends was so dope, and I'm sure there's a team there that's like, yo, let's make fucking more of that, right? And I think that's out of passion. But everybody doing it at the same time, I think is wild. But yeah, like I think I think you have to have it be a slow burn. And to Greg's point, if it was just fair games, or if it was just Marathon, and you were letting Destiny lead Bungie lead the charge and go, all right, let's put a lot of investment into this thing and nurture it and like make sure this is good. All right, now let's start to grow this slowly and make it a thing where it isn't 0 to 100, or in this case, right, 12% to 60%, right? Like if it wasn't that full on investment that is all these things at the same time, and it being now we're seeing deviations seemingly fall off based on that report. And that I think is just the first, right? We've seen the report about Last of Us, what's going on with the multiplayer game. I'm with you, Greg, of do we ever play that thing? What is the next story? Do I think we do? I think we do.
I hope we do. I do. I just don't.
I think it's a question mark, right? I don't think it's a
They
first.
showed us the boots running. We have.
They never did.
Now.
I predicted the boots running.
But
in my dream that they showed us what
they showed
concept art.
Yeah, show concept art. They showed concept.
There was a trailer in there where the boots were running, though. I forget what trailer it was.
There's no trailer. Yes, there was a trailer for
trailer.
A different game, not for Last of Us. But what?
And again, to my point, Janet said it, but to reiterate, right? Like, yes, if the game isn't good, kill the game or reformat the game and come back. Like, I'm not saying you need to force something. God, no.
Yeah. But my question is, like, what's the next report we get, from one of these studios, right? Like, when do we get the, oh, man, and, like, this is happening to Haven or this is happening to Bungie or any of these other studios that we know are working on these games?
Bungie, I think, is fine. I think Bungie, again, is Destiny 2, which, of course, is what they're trying to model this on, or at least using their expertise for. In the same breath, I think Marathon, then, is pretty much a lock of that'll be all fine or whatever. Mm-hmm. It is, you look at the other ones of where it goes, I don't know. And the deviation stuff is very interesting and weird, like you said, of like, wait a second, like, what's the math on that? Mm-hmm. It's, I don't know. Like, I feel like you should have stepped out with this with Last of Us. If Last of Us wasn't ready, why not talk about the Guerrilla, multiplayer for Horizon or something to that effect? Why not attach to an IP? Again, if you wanted to do the show, this is more of us talking about the showcase in Monday Morning Quarterback, that if you wanted to do this and not make your audience go, do we believe in this? This is, who are you? What is this? Why not do just a Jim Ryan section, a Herman Hulse section that is like, we know we're showing all these things. We're excited about our single player studios as well, though. I mean, Sucker Punch is working on Ghost of Tsushima 2. Naughty Dog's next game is going to be something really neat, and you're going to, whatever tease, do little teases similar to fucking Nintendo being like, yo, next year there's a Princess Peach game. What is it? I don't care. Don't worry.
See, I thought that was weird when Nintendo did that. Because I'm like, this is your time to like talk about. Like,
but it's like the way Nintendo does anything is weird. I think I would have packaged it different as PlayStation.
Yeah, I do think that like that's kind of one of the problems with PlayStation. They're so caught up in their own prestige that they refuse to touch the earth and like speak to the common folk. I mean, genuinely, it's not to say there's not like dope people working at PlayStation, because obviously there are, but the company tone is corporate and prestige. Like, we're gonna, here is our art, and then they just kind of like, there's not a community feel. And I feel like I would love to see that conversation with PlayStation as well, but that's a much more candid, down to earth conversation. I feel like that's just not generally the tone they have, which I guess you don't need to take that tone when you're like in the lead. But at the same time, how do you stay in lead? By getting ahead and doing this stuff to like keep you there. I think too, bringing it back to like the conversation on like their multiplayer strategy and what's going to go down. I definitely would hate to see or continue to see studios suffer at the hands of someone else's bad business decisions. I mean, I think that's like the history of business, unfortunately, right? And you see this in so many, people always will be in the comments like, what about this other random job that has nothing to do with video games? Like, I'm like, that we're not talking about because it's not games. But to people's point, you see that kind of everywhere, that story everywhere of people making big business decisions, and who suffers? It's the worker.
Yeah.
So while it's unfortunate, I hope that gets avoided. That is unfortunately going to be up to leadership. Do they have the guts to stick it out through the bad times because they believe in what their teams have and the talent that they've created in their teams? And I'm not saying you have to do that every time. As much as it sucks for people to lose their job, maybe there was times where again, the game should be canceled, where the team isn't working, where those decisions also need to be made. I'm not saying that, you can just have a million studios, just have the kindness of your heart, because that's just not the reality of the business. Obviously, I think there's a good way to do it and a bad way to do it. I do think as far as them wanting to push for multiplayer, I think you do kind of have to go in and throw a lot of shit at the wall. That is messy, and you will fuck people up over it. But at the same time, you see that on the flip side. When we think of what people are weak at, right? Xbox is weak in the exclusive titles, right? They're kind of single player moments. PlayStation's strong in that, and they clearly feel they're weak in things like the handheld cloud stuff. They're weak in things like the multiplayer stuff. Maybe, I guess they care about VR because they keep putting out VR consoles, stuff like that, right? And they want to grow those areas and experiment in those areas. You have to do a lot of work before you start to reap the benefits. I think if they try to do, here's one live service game that at a time, you're never gonna, I don't think you're ever gonna win that way. I mean, I don't know if they're gonna win this way either, but I do think you have to kind of go all in on trying shit. I don't necessarily agree with the idea of that being so top down that you're I don't know how heavy-handed they are in the team's projects. I think they can be heavy-handed to a fault. So that's definitely a concern. But putting that to aside for a second, I do think you need to kind of go in and see what ends up working, and not just be so stuck on one thing, because it's so hot and cold with it, right? We've seen games turn around, games not turn around. Then there's the debate of, oh, well, if you gave it more time, and it's well, we can't give it more time. There's so much push and pull with that, but I can see a lot of viability in the idea of trying a lot at once. That being said, though, to bring it back to that main conversation of Blessing's show, The Blessing Show, as you see on youtube.com/KindaFunnyGames.
Correct. Yeah.
Thank you.
Nailed it.
I'm is there the games that, right? It's not working right now because it's not. People aren't excited about it. It doesn't seem promising. It's not exactly a hot. I think the fact that who wrote in saying it's a disservice to put Marathon in. The fact that they say it's a disservice to lump Marathon in with this tells you how weak the strategy is. Because even they're saying oh, well, don't count Marathon. That's bad. I'm not saying it's working, but I do think the idea of going all in and going hard on it makes sense. But we're not buying into it yet because of how they're selling it. They're not selling it well.
My thing with going all in on it is, it's hard for me to think. I can't think of an example of a video game publisher that went from making a lot of single player games to then going all in on live service and multiplayer games where
Sure.
it is hit and we've loved it. Every example I can think of that is remotely close to that has been not great. Bethesda is one that comes to mind of one that tried it recently, right? Where Bethesda in a year put out Wolfenstein Youngblood and Fallout 76 and just put out Redfall, right? And
which I was shocked to still see Fallout 76 being talked about in the modern era. I was I know one person that lives in that game and loves it, and that's it.
And as
the people who are in there must be spending money.
As reported recently, right? That was a top-down thing. That was Bethesda and ZeniMax being we need more multiplayer games because this is going to serve us better long-term in terms of revenue, right? And that's coming from a publisher that has put out incredible single-player games like Dishonored and Skyrim and Wolfenstein and Doom and all this stuff, right? Them seeing the dollar signs and going, hey, let's make this post, let's push for this initiative, and it not working, right? I look toward, I think another example would be Activision, who financially has served them very, very well because guess what? Call of Duty is everywhere and it's very popular and all this stuff. But there's that complaint from the audience that Activision is just Call of Duty. And that's great for Activision, but as the audience, you look at that portfolio and there's this desire of, man, y'all got so much money and so much power and other IP in there that we like to see. And they go, no, Call of Duty is our moneymaker. We're sticking to this, right? And that's a transition that happened over the years. I don't know, I look at Amazon, I guess, as a recent video game publisher, right? And they weren't necessarily a transition, but they're in a place right now where they are throwing live service stuff at the wall to see what sticks, and a lot of that stuff is not sticking, right? Crucible came out.
And they are closing them up.
And they're closing them up, right? Crucible came out and came out in in a month, right? Or in a week. It was a very quick launch for that game. And I've not heard many people talk about New World, and they keep trying things, right? And I think that's what happens when you focus all in on, or when you focus at all in live service these days, right? There's a big chance that you're going to fail. And there's a big investment from PlayStation in a lot of these games at the same time, and the fact is that like a large chunk of them is going to fail. Chances are most of them are going to fail just based off of the track record right now we're seeing from these kinds of games. And I think the thing is that we're on a PlayStation podcast. We enjoy PlayStation games. We root for these companies. We root for these studios. We want to see the studios do well and all that, right? It is so tough for me to think of a scenario where all the studios are thriving with like the balance of live service and this amount of effort being put into it, and also their single player stuff as well, right? This feels like a transition we've seen happen before with many other publishers, and it just not happened for them.
Another example would be WB with Montreal, and Rocksteady with both Gotham Knights and then upcoming Suicide Squad, which is also like the reaction to that, like. Was also very middling when you had that PlayStation Direct, whatever the shorter ones are called, State of Play. And then very soon the Suicide Squad got delayed out of the year, and they want to take time to look over what that game is, but like what does that even do for that game, right?
Here's a question I have.
One thing I want to chime in again with why I just have trouble believing PlayStation's committed for the long haul on it is that it reminds me a lot of, and I'm forgetting the game, chat, this is going to be a real test for you, and I can't get to it, but it was Guns Up and another game that was not a MOBA, but it was similar to being a MOBA, and I want to say something like Hell, Critical, something like that, or some, maybe, it doesn't matter, but the idea was that Sony Santa Monica and it was being used as an incubator to do a bunch of weird little things. They're like, oh, we see a lot of, let's do Guns Up as a free-to-play thing and try that out. It was PlayStation was trying things there with that one, and then the MOBA-like game that I can't remember the real name of.
Fat Princess.
No, but I mean, but it was that idea that they did both these things. We did previews for them at IGN. We talked about them beyond. They eventually launched, and they just fizzled out and did nothing or closed up. Not Paragon, but Paragon. It was another.
Paragon, I was thinking of.
But that's not it. This is.
You're not thinking of Drawn to
beyond
Death.
that. Okay. No, not Drawn to Death, but that is another example.
Yeah.
Drawn to Death was another because that was originally free to play, right? And then they were like, you know what? Actually, we got to charge for it. Or was it the opposite?
I think it might have been the opposite.
Was it the opposite way?
Yeah.
PlayStation tries a bunch of stuff, which again is admirable.
Yeah.
But they try stuff and then aren't afraid to be like, we're done with that. It didn't work. And so that's why here where it's like 60% in 2025 or 2026, 2026. 60%? 2025?
Yeah.
I will believe it when I see it. Kill Strain. Yeah, Marsh Hero. Great job. Janet, back to you.
Yeah, I mean, that was literally what I was going to ask, so I guess I'll just ask Blessing since you gave your answer. Like, do you see them hitting that by 2025? Do you think they'll pivot before they're in too deep? Because, it's interesting. Like, a bad plan can still work, but also, like, do you think they're down to abandon it if it goes too bad, do you see this netting out in 2025?
I guess it depends on how you define bad, right? Because I think the way I see this is, I think Helldivers 2 is the first one slated, right? Helldivers 2 is coming out this year. I think that comes out. I think it's fun. I think it reviews well. And I think
Yeah, you drafted it, didn't you?
I did draft it, yeah.
Yeah, and along with fucking Viewfinder, you fucking Judas. But
whoa.
That's the game. I just spent money. I put most of my money into Viewfinder. But I think Helldivers 2, I think it does well, but I don't know how long that lasts in the conversation, right? I think it lasts like a few weeks in the conversation, and then over time they put out updates, and those updates just don't. I don't think those updates last as long as probably PlayStation thinks that they might last. I think this is me. I don't know the order of these, right? But Marathon comes out. I think it does well. I think because it's Bungie, right? I think it maintains the player base. How large is that player base? How active is it? That's another question. But I think that does well too. But might struggle with retention.
Hold on one second. We're gonna bring Sam into this conversation because he asked the question you're answering. I don't like the live service model as nefariously consumes more and more of the marketplace with botched attempts. I dislike it even more as PlayStation veers away, to any degree, from what they're great at. I agree with everything Bless said in the Blessing Show. But if you had to pick one live service title out of the known ones in development, which would you think is most likely to actually succeed and why? Not the one that you think will succeed, but which would you hope would succeed? And a Marathon.
I think Marathon would be my answer. Yeah.
The pedigree of Bungie.
Bungie knows what they're doing. They have experience with this, right? And I think in terms of gameplay, they are so rock solid, and I think if you're making that type of game, then you have to have that be rock solid. And I have trust in Bungie. I think the other two games I have listed here, right? Concord and I've already lost my thing. Fair Games. Those are the ones that I have fear with the most, right? Because those are coming from studios who this is their first outing.
Sure,
they're putting out
talented people working there who have made a lot of great games before, but it's so hard to be a new studio and start from scratch.
Yes, and what I'm trying to remind myself what even Fair Games the exact premise of it is, because I know it's a heist game. I know it's PvP.
Just PvP heist.
Is it PvPvE? I guess it doesn't matter, right? Like I think
you just have PvP written, so it probably just is PvP.
Sweet.
God, it's hard to say.
But yeah, like I think that comes out. I think it's an attempt. I think that might come out and struggle to maintain a player base, and I can see Concord doing the same thing.
And the one thing that we're not talking about is we address this is like, again, live service, games as a service. It is such a nebulous term, right? Because again, my hope had been, and still to some degree is, that it'll be these battle passes and whatever, and the lessons learned as a live service, games as a service. Maybe that's what they meant back in the day when they were like, oh, we're gonna have 12 of these things or whatever. So even now, where it's like, we bring up Fair Games, and it's like, okay, I envision that to be Payday. Is it just going to be Payday, and then it is the thing that goes on? Helldivers 2 is a game that is online and you can play, but you could have played. It was really hard. You could have played Helldivers 1 alone, right? And it does have an ending, and it did have a thing. It felt like a Bungie or a Destiny. I remember playing it third person, but it was like it is a little bit of like, are these live service games that are just multiplayer games at some point? Like, are they? How does that work? Where does that shake out in terms of the grander discussion?
Yeah,
just tossing that in there as we talked about like what would be a successful or failure.
Yeah. When they talk about Fair Games, right, on the PlayStation blog, they write, as huge fans of competitive multiplayer experiences, Fair Games came from the desire to create a new type of PvP game with emergent sandbox gameplay, right? And so that's what they're calling Fair Games. And then Concord, right, is them talking about PvP multiplayer first-person shooter coming to PS5 and PC. And I think both of those are spaces that are so competitive with other games to play, and if you're going to come out with those as PlayStation, those have to be fucking bangers. And it's hard for me to think that these games are going to come out and really compete with the other games in the space. I think Marathon has the chance to do that because that's Bungie, and I think Helldivers is what Helldivers is.
Well, see, here's what's interesting about Helldivers. I can't wait for Helldivers. You will see me, constantly pester Arrowhead on Twitter as we watch this about where the game is, when the release date, yada yada yada. The switch to this art style to make it a bit more realistic compared to what Helldivers 2 was, or Helldivers was, sorry, which is a little bit more top down if we want to jump to it after the fact, Barrett. It's the thing of like that Helldivers 2 thing. I can't wait because I loved Helldivers. I think I had so much fun with Helldivers. I'm excited to see what the sequel would bring. That if I feel that if I wasn't sold on Helldivers 1 and I wasn't a Helldivers fan, I would look at the Helldivers 2 thing and like, that looks pretty generic.
Yeah.
That looks pretty much like I'm shooting bugs. Like there's a million games where I'm a space marine shooting bugs or whatever. And I'm not saying that means they should have kept the old art style. I'm not saying anything like that. This could all be great. But like I look at Helldivers 1 here up on the screen and like, oh, that is visually different. And granted, we're seeing a trailer and all these different things, and I'm going to get in there and have a great time with it, I'm sure. But in terms of a general audience, in terms of making you believe that PlayStation has a plan for all this, it's not just we're throwing 12 games at the wall that do live service stuff and see what works. This is what a PlayStation live service game is. This is what live service means to PlayStation. Yeah. Like, I wish we had that. I wish all the stocks Jim Ryan has given to fucking the Wall Street Journal and everything. He always talks to one group, one.com in the morning.
Yes, or not.
It's like some very newsy place.
Yeah, fucking real news.
Oh,
anyways, he always talks to those people, and it's all he's
CNN.com.
Talked a lot. I feel like we've had a lot of talks
GQ.
about all this, a live service and stuff, but I don't feel we've had this is what it is to us.
Not Inverse, right? Does he talk to Inverse?
No, not Inverse. Omega Buster says GQ.
Yeah,
not GQ.
I think he's. You could put anything in there, and I'd be like, that sounds right.
Where he should be talking, of course, is patreon.com/kindafunny. Barrett noted that the conversation's been so good, we're really deep in the show, and I should probably tell you about patreon.com/kindafunny, where, of course, you can be watching the show live as we record it and be part of the chat like Omega Buster is. Of course, you could get the show ad-free over there. You could get it a day early when we record it like I'm talking about right now. You could get a bevy of bonus episodes of things like KindaFunny, Greg Way, and so much more only on patreon.com/kindafunny. However, if you're not on patreon.com/kindafunny like you aren't right now, here's a word from our sponsor.
This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. It's so easy to get caught up in what everyone else needs from you and never take a moment to think about what you need from yourself. I know this from experience, how often it just seems easier to care about others and to keep it moving. But When we spend all of our time giving, it can leave us feeling stretched thin and burnt out. Therapy can give you the tools to find more balance in your life so you can keep supporting others without leaving yourself behind. Some of my very best friends use BetterHelp and love how helpful it can be for learning positive coping skills and how to set boundaries. It empowers you to be the best version of yourself. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Find more balance with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/kindafunny today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/kindafunny.
Continue the conversation.
So I think from here, right, when we're talking about live service stuff, the next few would be the London Studios game, which we don't know much about at all, so that's hard to gauge. There's the Horizon multiplayer game, which, I think we've talked about quite a bit on KindaFunny, and like me and Andy, I think both were like, dude, if they took this idea after playing Forbidden West and put it into a Monster Hunter-like game, that would be so clutch. Like, I think that would be such a good type of game. And they've not gotten that deep into talking about what it is, but I think there's a shot, right? Like, and I can say that for any of these. I think there's a shot that any of these are going to be good. But
I mean, but like Horizon Monster Hunter, especially after playing Wild Hearts, where we were like, oh man, this is great. And that was like a brand new IP. Let alone if you're dropped into what I'm sure would be a visually breathtaking world from Guerrilla, you and me playing, all of us playing. It's like Ghost of Tsushima again, Legends or something to that effect. Like,
but that's the exciting thing is when we're thinking beyond what they showed at the PlayStation Showcase, I start to think of that Horizon game. I start to think of a potential Ghost of Tsushima Legends 2, that since we know that they're hiring for multiplayer, and I'm sure they want to do some kind of iteration on that, and that would fit so well for what they want out of this live service plan. I think that's when you start to get into where this thing could work, because at the top of my script, at the top of the episode, of the Blessing Show episode, I talk about my excitement for the idea of, dude, a Horizon Monster Hunter game would be dope. More Ghost Legends would be dope. Lastless multiplayer would be dope, right? And the hope would be that Ghost and Horizon aren't having the same struggles that Lastless multiplayer is having, because I think another big bullet point here is the fact that this stuff is hard to make. Like, the commitment to ongoing content and post-launch content is hard to do. The Halo with 343, like 343 is a very talented developer that made a very fantastic Halo game until they weren't able to support it, right, at a consistent rate. And that is where a lot of these things fail. That's where we get into the content problem of a lot of these games and service games. Like, that's where we get into the issue with games like Anthem, and the list goes on, right? You got to have the content to back it up. You got to give these games the support to back it up. If you don't have that, these games die real quick. And that could be an issue for any of these games, because that's not something that that's not something that I look at Naughty Dog and I'm like, oh, you guys are going to nail this because you've nailed all these other things. No, like, Naughty Dog has nailed a lot of things, like narrative and visuals and all this stuff. They've not had a game where they've had to support it for years and years and put out launch content and like at a good rate. That is something that
I was going to say, you're not going to count the hats and outfits in Uncharted multiplayer.
No, I won't count those. But that's something that seasoned games as a service developers struggle with. That's something that I saw even Respawn struggle with Apex at some points, of keeping things updated and keeping people happy over a period of time. And I think that's going to be a big learning thing. And I think that's where Bungie's coming in and being like, oh shit, all right, let's figure this shit out. I think they're going to have to do that with all the studios, because that's a Herculean task.
100%.
I think too, like, it's probably creatively exhausting to work on that game kind of indefinitely, right? Like, there was a big conversation on, like, I forget if you guys remember what article it initially came from, talking about what the development cycles of games are and how they're like getting like fairly long in the tooth.
There's a Jason Schreier tweet, I believe.
Okay, yeah. So I'm referencing that, and a lot of people were talking about that, both like critics and also developers, and like a lot of developers were like, yeah, I can't, like, now it's like hell. If you're developing a game for like 6-8 years, it's like, I just am exhausted from being in that world, working on that project. I mean, reflect for a second on all of our own lives, respectively. You guys here and then people listening. Like, sure, a lot of us have been in our industry for a long time, but like, how long have you been at the same job? Like, think of doing like really the same project at that job for such a long time. Like, that's got to wear heavy. I mean,
to dial it back, it would be like,
sure.
Because you could be like, oh, well, you do this or you do that. Like, you review video games. It's the idea of working on one video game review for 6 years, the one episode of The Blessing Show rather than one episode of P.S. I Love You for that one.
Yeah, and also I think I was wrong. I think, well, Jay Schreier did have a tweet, but I think you're referencing
Matt Booty. Matt Booty had a conversation recently.
Yes. Yeah. I think too, like, that's what's so tough about this conversation with, or just thinking about the prospect of that games of a service thing, It's like, do you want it too bad that you're going to fumble the bag of the pursuit of like the creative vision and also the money? But then it's like you also start to think about how often, how can you like creative? I think when you monetize your creativity in general, like that's automatically like it. I don't know. I don't want to sound like too dramatic, but like it leaves like some of that purity behind, right? We talk about it all the time with like this in our career. It's like, I love what I do and I still have a big love for games and I still play games for fun, all this stuff, this, that, and the other. But the relationship is fundamentally changed. So I think obviously you're making games, you're selling these games, like there's already the businessification of that. And it's like, to what point, if we think of live service games that are successful, what kind of went into that and how much was that genuine passion? How much was it is the idea that would work monetarily? Because there's also that aspect of development in general. So I think it's also becomes tough where you're sort of trying to go for this and it feels very like almost creatively fake, but like, has it ever been creatively real when you've pursued these things? And to what degree has it been? And again, I'm not trying to put any like, creative morality on those decisions, but I think that kind of adds an extra layer of complexity because it's like, the reality is you think of something like Fortnite, like they doubled down on their battle royale component because they saw it was popping off. And it's like, sure, I'm sure there's a lot of passion for what that team makes, but also they were like, I feel like this is kind of popping off. Let's go, let's chase it down. And I'm not above that either. There's definitely projects. You're a lot more incentivized to post a certain kind of video and make a certain kind of project or whatever you do in your career when you see it's working and it makes sense. Like there's something wrong with that. But then it becomes like, what is artifice and what is genuine in this developmental pursuit, and to what degree can one like stifle the other? Yeah. I feel like that was either I don't know how much that accurately came through with what I'm trying to say, but I think you guys kind of get generally what I'm getting at. And I think the challenge of what does that look like? Also, someone's honking outside my house. I can't wait to leave here. There's a dog going crazy earlier. Take care of your dog. I know you're listening to the show. Please spend time with that dog. Anyway, blessing with that.
I mean, it's a deep question, and in a way, you can take that question and loop it back to single player games of what are the sacrifices you're making to make even a single player game sell, right? Or any piece of media or any piece of art, right? Like there are things you need to do to make anything sell and be commercially viable. I also think it comes to the fact of, live service can be applied to many different kinds of games, where Fortnite is the thing that immediately comes to mind. And I can totally understand the argument that, Fortnite is creatively bankrupt. I don't think it is. I think that's doing a disservice to people that work at Epic.
What a pull quote.
Well, yeah, and that's not me saying that.
Have the crew.
That's
I played? No.
That's not me saying that. But if you talk about
I get the money every month.
Fortnite is purely...
Set it and forget it. You'll come back to so many V-Bucks.
Fortnite is mainly driven by collaborations and character skins and getting Marvel and DC and Harry Potter and whatever things you can jam in there to then sell the skins and battle passes to people. You can say that, right? And I think there's so much of that is true, right? Even with that, there's still a level of creativity and inspiration in Fortnite and the people that work on it, right? That is valid, and I think that does speak to true creativity. But I think that is the most like apex example of games as a service, right? But then you look at something like Street Fighter, which is technically games as a service as well, that has a battle pass, that has a roadmap, that has DLC that's going to happen over time, right? But I also think that game has a lot of inspiration, has a lot of pure creativity that's and passion that is put into it, and it's tough to like, I guess, separate the two in a way, because this is a business and this is capitalism and all that stuff. But yeah, I think I could see let's take Horizon for example, right? The Horizon multiplayer game. I could see the reaction from a player base going, oh man, I love the writing and the quest and all this stuff in Horizon single player, but when I played the multiplayer, I saw I could see people then nitpicking and looking at certain elements and going, oh, this is a money move. Like they watered down my Horizon to make it multiplayer. I think there could be the argument there, but I think we have to wait and see, right? I think for that you have to look at the merit of the studio and go, all right, like let's see how y'all treat this thing. Like let's see how you guys do it. But I think there's also the fact of the matter is that multiplayer games and live service games are just different from single player games, and so you're gonna have that regardless. When I played Last of Us, right, which is a 10 out of 10 video game, the original Last of Us, guess what? That multiplayer mode has a gun that is OP that you have to pay real money for. And that was a thing that pissed me off because I did not want to pay real money for that thing. And you can make the argument that, hey, that is capitalism, that is business, that is what happens when you inject multiplayer or live service into a thing. But it's also the name of the game. It's also what multiplayer and live service is. And so it's a tough thing.
Yeah. Also, I am excited for the idea of Guerrilla doing a multiplayer game. I just didn't jump to that because it's too cliche. You know what I mean? Like I keep falling into these archetypes I make myself for myself, and I'm like, I'll let y'all talk on it. But yeah, of course I want that. I've wanted that for forever. The dig at the quest, like the story. I enjoy the story of Horizon. I'm not in tears, right? It's like, let's be honest. Like, I like fighting the big machines, and I like being like, this one looks like an alligator. This one looks like a giraffe, and then I kill it, and it's great. Or sometimes I climb up it, and I'm like, wow, the world's beautiful.
But
and
what if you pay for a battle pass, and then one of them looks like a giraffe, and that's pretty cool.
Honestly,
Once you reach level 5
here's
of the battle
thing.
pass,
For me, and I know, like, I feel like someone wrote this question, so I don't know, Greg, if it's in there, feel free to bring it in. But the kind of conversation around what would compel you to get it? Like, how often are you dipping into live service? I'm not a very live service person because I just grew up very
Neens says, how many lives do you
Yes.
actually see yourself playing after launch? How many have actually seen playing?
For me, realistically, I think 1 to 2 absolute maximum. You could make 8 Fortnites, and I would still. It took me. You know how long it took me to get into Fortnite? Most games got canceled before I would have ever gotten into them. I see Neens in the chat. Neens, I know I haven't been squatting up in Fortnite. Eddie keeps texting me, and I'm like, maybe next week. Yeah, Fortnite's set it and forget it for me. So I already have that one kind of in the back burner. I'm a big fan of Splatoon, and I've dipped into that. I miss you too, Neens. I'm mentally there all the time. Splatoon I've dipped into, but I've kind of fallen off of that. So for the PlayStation side of things, I could see myself doing 1 to 2. I think realistically, just for me, my time, my interests as a player, which are heavily single player interests, admittedly, I probably could only dig in a bit. And then it also depends, I think, on the squad, right? I referenced my party for Fortnite. Like, I think I would be playing without a party, and I've done a couple single player matches, like, solos or whatever. But I really have a lot of fun doing it with my friends and getting to, like, play together and, like, catch up. And, I think the cliches that everyone kind of nods to when they talk about why they enjoy, getting online. Like, part of that is that the communities that you build. So, but yeah, for Horizon, I mean, I'll play anything Horizon. I'm in VR in Horizon. I'm in fucking multiplayer DLC. I'm doing shit that like other games are like, she'd never do that for us. And I'm like, I'm fucking down bad for Horizon, bitch. Like, I bought the Lego set. Like, I'm a stan. I've gone the other side, right? I'm a critical stan, which is rare, and I don't think very enjoyed by a lot of people. But yeah, that I would definitely get into. But again, the idea of commitment or whatever and how long, 1 to 2, absolute max. I can't imagine a world where what am I quitting my job and just doing this? Like, it's too much.
And that's the thing where you talk about all this, right? Where it's like, yeah, our jobs in general of playing stuff. It's why I drop into Fortnite and drop out. It's why Diablo 4 has meant that I didn't review Final Fantasy, because I was like, I'm going to stick with this, and even after the fact, that's what I'm going to play at home, right? So you look at the list, and it's like from the Blessing Show, right? Of like Last of Us multiplayer games, the first one on there, right? Like, if that was to drop, I could see me playing and having legs, but again, I don't think it's going to. Fair Games does not, a PvP heist game does not interest me. I don't play Payday. Concord, a PvP multiplayer FPS. I don't like PvP multiplayer or PvP FPS. No, thank you. Marathon, a PvP extraction shooter. I like Rainbow Extraction for the couple streams we did, but I didn't play it after the fact, so that's not happening for me. Helldivers 2, I am excited for. PvE, co-op, third person, but even that, like, Helldivers 1 was one of the shticks was it's really, really hard. And where I am in 2023, if this drops, and it is, we're still gonna rub your nose in shit and kick your head. I'm like, that will not be something I stick around with, because I like, jumping into Diablo, because it is as hard as I want to make it. What do I want to do? How would this actually go? Am I gonna have a crew for this? Is Jen gonna be into this? Is Blessing gonna be into this to the point that we're playing it at night? I don't know. There's a lot of questions for it. I'm excited for Helldivers 2. I can't wait for Helldivers 2. I know who I am in 2023 though, and I do know that there's a chance I won't work with that one. Deviation, working on a new FPS IP. Like, I just don't really care about first-person shooters. Like, again, you can be like, oh, Greg just doesn't like multiplayer games, which is true. I've argued, but then there is stuff like Diablo, and there's
Division.
There's exceptions.
There's the rare exceptions, and so you could be like, well, Greg doesn't care about this. So what does that mean for Greg, the fucking PlayStation guy? If PlayStation's 60% of their fucking identity is multiplayer stuff all of a sudden, am I still and it's the weird thing of like, it's my beat forever. So it's like, that's why, but it's like, if all of a sudden Xbox is like Hellblade and this, and here's all these other awesome first parties, am I suddenly like, well, I'm playing it on there, I might as well, I'll start playing Diablo over there,
I think that villain arc makes a lot of sense for Greg
Starts
to
talking
go
about
to the PC side. 100%.
I didn't say PC. I'm never going PC.
God.
See, why would you say that? Why would you tempt fate like that? It's that kind of hubris that's
you
going
are
to get you in the
tempting
fucking PlayStation, in the
Got
fucking
that
PC
amazing
gaming
Steam
chair.
Deck, and I
didn't
just
know
use
how
it
to
for
fucking
remote
say it,
play.
but-
I just use it for PlayStation 5 remote
Exactly.
play.
At first, it's just a Steam Deck, and then what's the Steam Deck connecting to, really?
So
PC.
I look at this list of games, and I would be down to play most of them, but at that point it just comes down to time and bandwidth, and I don't think I'm gonna have the time and bandwidth to play all of these games, especially if they're all ongoing at the same time, right, in the same year. Last is multiplayer game for sure I'm gonna play. Fair games, I want to try out. Like, I'm down to try a PvP heist game, and like honestly, that's a lot of that is purely because it's PlayStation Studios, right, and like we're PlayStation people and it's PS I love you and stuff,
and that's what will happen here. To be clear, and if people ever want to throw it back in our face, like. We're a PlayStation podcast. So when these games come through and there's PlayStation previews and there's PlayStation reviews for them, we will go do that. But it is that thing of I will be shocked if I play fair games and I'm like, I'm eating my words. Fuck, I want to play this after launch with the Kind of Funny community. I want to go do this. I want to stream it with Mike. I want to blah, blah, blah.
Like,
also, just me, fair game's not a good name to me. Like, right? Like, does anyone else feel
Sounds
like...
like a studio name every time. Like, I've been trying to look up
I
the
think
studio,
that too, yeah.
you know?
Like, I'm like, oh yeah, Fair Game Studio. I'm like, no, that's Haven. But yeah, I mean, Fair Games, if it wasn't a PlayStation Studios game, I'll look at it the same way I look at like Rogue Company or The Finals, right? Which is, oh, these games look neat, and like I try them out. Like, I played Rogue Company for 2 days and had fun with it, and then bounced off, never picked it up again. But Fair Games being a PlayStation thing, I'm gonna check it out for that because that does something for me. Concord, right? Like, same thing as Fair Games, where yeah, I'll try it out. Like, I like these kinds of games, but also I don't play every single one of these kinds of games because there's a lot of them and they take time and effort and all this stuff. Marathon, I'll check out, right? If a PvP thing from Bungie. I love playing Destiny PvP so much. How long I stick with that? Who knows? I gotta see more. Helldivers 2, I want to check out. I've heard Greg talk about Helldivers 1 so much, and like, I look at the gameplay of Helldivers 2, and it looks fun to me. It does look plain, but I got trust in Greg's from
That's where your
Helldivers
first
1.
mistake is.
And I've heard so many good things about Helldivers 1, so I want to check out Helldivers 2. Deviation Studios thing, same with Fair Games and Concord. And then we get into like London Studios co-op game, fantasy game set in London. That sounds like a neat premise. I want to see more. Guerrilla, a Horizon game, for sure, count me in. And then, yeah, there's MLB The Show, which I don't play year to year, and then a Twisted Metal reboot that... Sure, like, why not? I'll play a Twisted Metal
that
reboot.
Twisted Metal thing, like, absolutely. Just to see what I've forgotten from the eras past. Like, I liked Twisted Metal a lot, like, back on the PSP when I played, God, what was it called? Twisted Metal...
Black? No, PSP?
No. Yeah, the cover was, like, red. See, my shelf's all fucked up, so I
Twisted
can't pull it
Metal
out.
You can't just pull it out. Yeah, you're off your game.
Yeah, all I have is this fucking bobblehead. What good is that gonna do?
Twisted
It was for
Metal
one
Head
bit.
On.
Yes, thank you, Barrett. So I fucked with that heavy. So I'm definitely gonna check out what modern Twisted Metal looks like, which I'm not gonna lie, I don't have high hopes for, but I'm interested in it. But yeah, I think as far as like the idea of us specifically getting into PlayStation's live service when it actually drops, right, and it comes to fruition, we can play the games and talk about those games. I think it'll probably be heavily contingent on the approach that they take, kind of like you point out, Bless, where it's like what counts as live service, like. Is this a live service game because I can buy a different gun in it and keep playing it? It's like, that'll kind of be what determines what I get into. Because if it's just like what I think of traditionally, right, that kind of Fortnite model, the Destiny model, like I only have space for like 1 to 2, maybe, and I tend to fall off, but I come back to, and they know, and that's also part of the nature of the thing. I think also just to point out for people that maybe like, I don't want people jumping to conclusions that, oh, because I'm not playing it, that means it's going to fail. There's a lot of games I do not fuck with at all that are highly successful.
Sure.
And I think these definitely speak to specific audiences and audiences that will have a mix of, customer, for lack of a less capitalistic term, right? The people that go in all day, the people that do the dailies, the people that only do the events, the people that only play with, everyone falls into these different tropes and things. I think the real challenge here is it going to have a strong enough base to be viable? And then are they willing to support that base through potential struggles it has so that someone like me could start, wait, and come back later? Like, will I even be able to come back in a few years and have what I had with Fortnite about a year ago? Or that game would have been, dead for eons ago. And I'm like, well, I never got the chance to really get into it because that timeline doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah. I mean, PlayStation doesn't need everybody to play all of these games,
exactly,
right?
yeah.
Like, I don't think that's the strategy here. In the way that we kind of do that for PlayStation single player stuff, where I feel like, there's a PlayStation audience that is playing God of War and Spider-Man and Horizon and stuff. I don't think PlayStation's not looking forward to people playing Concord and Fair Games and all of these things, right? Like, I think that'd be a cool identity to build, but also that's almost impossible when you're talking about all these being ongoing live service things. When you're talking about the audience that is playing them, though, is that audience going to be substantial and stick with it enough? I think that is more the question. That is more the, all right, like, you're asking for a lot for all these different kinds of games in a market that is divided and is split between all these things and is not growing at this current moment, right? I could be wrong about that, but like,
I'm making that up as I talk about it.
But I think the discussion, has been coming out of the pandemic, like video game, not that we're out of the pandemic, but you get what I mean, right?
Yeah.
Video game interest has like slowed in growth, right? Like I think it's like plateaued, and so you're not seeing the amount of people coming into it the way that you saw during 2020, 2021 around that time. And so like, like we'll see. And that's the reason why you see again Rumbleverses and Knockout Cities shut down and that stuff happening. We'll see if that hits for PlayStation, but it's a Herculean task once again.
Lots more to discuss on PS I Love You XOXO as we hurtle toward the 60% future. But for now, Bless, what happened this week in PlayStation?
I only got one thing for you. Of course, there's an Xbox trial that's been going on all day today. One of the biggest PlayStation pieces of news, an Xbox trial. But there's been information from it that's been very interesting. This one comes from PlayStation Lifestyle. At least I'm reading from PlayStation Lifestyle. Zarmina Khan, who wrote an article titled, "Sony won't share PlayStation 6 info with Activision if it's acquired by Microsoft." Sony Interactive Entertainment CEO Jim Ryan has said that the company won't be able to share PlayStation 6 information with Activision Blizzard if it's acquired by Microsoft, complicating matters when it comes to video game development. Microsoft has repeatedly said that it has no incentive to make Call of Duty games, or existing Activision titles for that matter, console exclusive to Xbox, and that doing so would incur heavy losses. Sony is concerned that if Activision Blizzard does indeed become a Microsoft studio, it would have to send over a dev kit to a rival's development company, and that would equate to spilling its technology secrets. In a deposition dated April 2023, Ryan was quizzed if Sony had similar concerns when dealing with Minecraft maker Mojang. His response to which has been redacted, except for the part where he alluded that it was a point of concern for Sony at that time too.
I love how redacted all these documents were when you're reading them on Games Daily.
Oh yeah, it was all just black lines, crossing out words or highlighted over words so you couldn't see them, and I couldn't help but to think of Control and how good that game was. Microsoft expressed similar concerns when MLB The Show went multi-platform. The company said that it had to trust Sony San Diego with pre-release Xbox Series X consoles to get the game on its platform. What a wacky scenario we're in with all of this.
Wacky indeed.
Yeah.
What I appreciated was the conversation. Of course, Barrett's thrown up here the tweet from Rebecca Valentine, who's in the courtroom, and they were showing a Tamor Hussein video of him interviewing. This is when Pete Hines was on the stand, and this is if he's actually on the stand or if it's some table. I haven't seen photos.
Name your least favorite media person. He's like Tamor Hussein.
Tamor Hussein. He's in the courtroom. He's right there, Your Honor. It's a goofy one of like how much of these emails are coming out and how much it is strictly just, saying whatever you can to block this fucking thing, and that's all it's all about. What you expect. It's business.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's tough
the theme
to
today
say.
is it's business. Okay, this
It's
is
not personal.
What does this do to Call of Duty on PlayStation 6? You know what I mean? Like, I'm trying to think of like a talking point that would spur from this, and that would be the one. And it's like such a ridiculous feature to think about. Is like
the first one, maybe the first one wouldn't launch day and date with the Xbox version. That's what it would do. Maybe, because you have to wait for all. But once you announce the PlayStation, then you can develop exactly for it.
At that point, I would think PlayStation gets over its pettiness and just give them the dev kit.
Yeah.
It's Activision.
I mean,
it's Call of Duty. Just give them the fucking dev kit.
I think this is definitely like, to Greg's point, this is something you say to try to stop the deal. It's not necessarily. It's not that this has never been like a thought that's crossed their mind. Like, I don't necessarily think that that's a disingenuous thought to ever have. But at the same time, like, I think the gotcha is like, oh, well, did you care about? Is it Mojang or Mojang? Mojang. So did you care? And they're like, oh, actually, one time I did care, and I was real worried. It's like, okay, like the truth is, we have examples where you don't seem to give a fuck about it, and now all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, now I give a fuck. It's like, this is the dance of the legality of it. Like, I don't necessarily think they're gonna change how they do anything, even out of penance, because they want the game. That's the point. They want the game, and they'd like to get it where it's not, the whole deal doesn't go through, because that's the best business outcome for them. But in lieu of that, they'll just take what they can get, because you're lucky you're getting anything.
It's the type of pettiness that I think I respect in some respects, because it's like a breakup, right? Where your ex starts dating another guy, and you're like, you know what? I'm gonna cancel the Netflix subscription, or you're gonna change the password. I'm gonna change the password.
What's your policy on that? If you're sharing a password with an ex, are you letting them politely leave? Are you changing it on them? Are you telling them you changed it? Like, what's the situation?
I've not been in that scenario, and so I've not had to deal with that. But
have you had someone else's Netflix.
Yeah, but family members. Like, I don't have my own Netflix subscription is the thing. And so, like, I've never gotten into a fight with my mom. My mom's like, you're off our Netflix. And she changes her password. But that's basically what PlayStation's doing. They're like, oh, you're with a new guy? All right, we're changing our password. You can watch my Netflix, sure, but he can't. He's not going to benefit off of my Netflix subscription.
Definitely.
Which, honestly, when I put it that way,
kidding?
I kind of get. Like, you're not going to let your ex's new guy watch your Netflix.
Exactly. Like, this is what a weird spot to end up in. But yeah, like, definitely. Like, I'm going out. I'm one to go down swinging, you know? This is exactly what PlayStation's doing. This is the whole point of this. It's like, maybe I can make this not go through. Maybe I can slow it down at least, if not. And, you know, it's an attempt. And it makes sense why they'd attempt it because, you know, that what do they stand to gain from this deal going through? Nothing. What do they stand to lose? A lot. Will they lose a lot necessarily? Maybe not from a player like, you know, people playing Call of Duty. If they're still going to be able to play Call of Duty on PlayStation, a lot of people playing Call of Duty have no idea this is even going on. But again, like, the point is to just try to stop the deal. And they're like, hey, this is a good argument to make, which quickly was unraveled. And then they're like, nuh-uh. So we'll see how the rest of the trial goes. But it's been interesting to watch from afar for sure.
Now it's time for PlayStation Picks. We're going to talk about the games that come out this week on PlayStation, what we picked to play. Out this week, we got Aliens Dark Descent, Crash Team Rumble, Rogue Legacy 2, Solstice. Let's see, Dr. Fetus. I'm actually looking at the Game Informer page.
I figured.
Dr. Fetus's Mean Meat Machine, Final Fantasy 16, Harmony, The Fall of Reverie, and Sonic Origins Plus. Big week.
Huge week.
Dr. Fetus's Mean Meat Machine.
Hey man, people are stoked with it.
Let's go. Greg, what you picked up on PlayStation?
Mainly, I've been working on a redacted review that you'll hear about soon. But when I'm not doing that in the work hours, of course, I'm still playing Diablo. Jen and I are still doing that on the nightly, getting in there and grinding out and going off and having a great time. And I can't get enough Diablo. Grinding out. Just getting in there, get some points up, singing songs. It's fun. Usually, it's like, you know, I'm not the multiplayer game, and then we list 15 games I've played ridiculous amounts of multiplayer with, right? But like, I don't get to play games with Jen often, and so it's been such a nice thing that, you know, usually get home, do dinner, bathe Ben, put Ben down. Her and I are both brain dead, sit on the couch, watch TV or whatever, then go to bed, right? Sitting down to play Diablo actually leads to us talking to each other, right? Because it's like, well, who fucking cares? We're not doing the story, right? Let's kill another goddamn skeleton and get over there to that dungeon or whatever. So it's like we're actually talking more than I think we normally do at night, which has been very lovely. And I'm just having a great time. I can't get enough. Like I tweeted earlier today, we're going off for a Napa vacation, and I'm definitely bringing the PlayStation because it's like once Ben goes down and we still got hours in the night, I'm just gonna drink the wine we bought and play Diablo with her.
Hell yeah. Janet, have you played anything?
No, man, I'm in a fucking drought. It's dry out here. It's dry as fuck out here. I don't even have my plate. I moved my PlayStation from my desk finally. It was like I was holding on to pack that like last. I'm like, I'm gonna go down swinging. Now I'm like, let's be honest. I'm not booting up anything. Let's just fucking put this on the kitchen table and Isaiah can take it to our new apartment when he comes by again. So no, but I'll be back next week with a vengeance. So stay tuned for that vengeance.
You're playing Smelliger Rising Revengeance. That's exciting.
Hey, I don't want to spoil anything. All right.
Hell yeah.
Save for next week, but something to look forward to. What about you?
I've been playing that Final Fantasy 16.
Ooh-wee!
You can go over to KindaFunny Gamescast from this week. That was the review. Listen to all my thoughts, and Tim Getty's thoughts, and Michael Heim's thoughts, and Andy Cortez's thoughts on that.
There's a lot of thoughts.
A lot of thoughts, you know. But
Thought City.
Thought City. I'm pretty sure that's like a Tyga song. No, I've also been. I also played the Liza P demo. I
saw you play.
Yeah, I played about half of it. Because I loved it so much that I was like, you know what? I'm gonna stop here and I'm gonna wait until the game comes out to play even more of it. It is good.
Yeah,
it's so good. Man, are they nailing what they're going for here? Which is basically we want to make Bloodborne, but Pinocchio, but also take influence from other FromSoft stuff and action games. And you know, I think they've found a happy place where it has that dark, like the setting and environment inspiration from Bloodborne, right? But then
very gothic,
right, and very dark and gritty. But like then the fighting system feels a bit inspired by Sekiro, just in terms of how the counters work. And they don't have like in Bloodborne, they have like the parry gun. They don't have that, but instead they have this cool mechanic where you use your arm that is like a mechanical arm that you can give different abilities. And so the one that you have early in the demo is like a grappling hook where you can grapple people towards you, and you can basically like get enemies that are across a gap and then pull them towards you and they fall down a roof or whatever. And I love that. And the way it feels to play, it feels right. I think that's one of the things where it comes to action games that take a lot of influence from games like Bloodborne and the FromSoft stuff. Does it feel right to play? Are you nailing the actual movement and the feel of it? And so far, I'm really enjoying the feel of it. The first big boss fight where we fight against like a big mechanical man that has a birdcage for some reason.
I'm a big mechanical man.
That's exactly what he says when you see him. You start fighting him, and like the way he moves, the way he animates, the way he winds up his attacks, all felt right. And I really like the phase changes. I really liked that was where I started to kind of understand the emphasis of staggering the opponent and like getting the right parries and stuff. And oh man, it feels right. It feels good. And so I'm very excited for this game. The demo, I was already sold, but the demo double sold me. Double sold. And so yeah, that's what I've been up to.
Would you pay $1,200 to play it?
No,
Great question.
absolutely not.
Okay.
No.
Great question.
Okay.
Yeah. Let me not name the price.
Don't give him ideas.
Hey, I don't want to.
What is your open critic prediction for this game?
Open critic prediction?
Mm-hmm. It's like Metacritic, but a little bit more lenient.
Yeah, it's like Metacritic, but the score actually goes into the Fantasy Critic League. So yeah.
I think what's going to ding it is the fact that people are going to compare it directly to Bloodborne, as they should, because it's going for that, and Bloodborne is like, I think that's the ceiling. I'm going to say 86.
I was thinking 84, so we'll see. I lose points for this game because it's my counterpick game. Because I fucked up.
Yeah, it's going to be a solid 15 at least.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
I'm praying though for a 78.
I need that, honestly.
In terms of my own league, obviously in terms of the game being good.
How much did you bid to get Viewfinder?
A lot.
I bid too, but I did my normal thing where I'm like, nobody's paying attention.
Here's the thing. I spent most of my money, which I was very happy about once I got Viewfinder. Like, I think I spent $50.
I'm sure you were.
Over $50. Listen, all of us here wanted Viewfinder, all right? And one of us had to get it.
Here's the thing.
And it just happened to be me because I spent a lot of money.
Did all of us have a conversation in the Giant Bomb Green Room where I said, are you getting, Viewfinder? Is that the game? You said, no, it wasn't Viewfinder. But now that I think about it, I want Viewfinder. And I said, okay, well, what if just neither of us got Viewfinder and we just kind of walked away from it? And I'll admit it, you didn't necessarily agree to that, but you didn't disagree. So when I went, I was gonna text you about it, and then I saw you already fucking took it.
Here's the thing. I was drunk. I don't remember that.
You're
Fair
fucking
enough.
bullshit. You were not even that drunk. Like, okay, you weren't sober, but you weren't drunk.
No, I played off very well. I play off my drunkenness very well.
No. Get out of here.
But no.
You can only tell when he has a gigantic bag for no reason.
No, it was a full day of being at a thing. I was collecting all the cards.
Just put the bag down.
I had so many water bottles. I couldn't let somebody steal them.
Look, man, whatever. Drunk or not, just for that, I hope the game falls apart in the final third.
Well, no, I'm upset because I don't have much money left, and
yeah, you got $7 left. But
I got $7 left, and this week Nintendo announced the Mario game. It looks good.
Was that this week? I mean, who's to say, right? Who's to say what was announced?
Who knows? I mean, what? I'm just in front of you two. It's not like Mike listens to the show.
It's funny that
jabroni, I was that.
At this point, it's I think we said in our Slack that y'all are just playing against each other at this point because
oddly enough, my biggest competition is Greg right now.
I know. I was surprised to see the.
There's only one trophy. As long as PS I Love You wins, that's what we want. But then there's a trophy. There's the MVP trophy.
For the MVP trophy. But
I'm getting that trophy.
Yeah, I wonder. Like, did Dead Cells not have points for what? Because I feel like you jumped up to 78 like recently.
Who, me?
No, Greg.
No, Greg.
Oh,
No,
Greg.
It was Diablo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Street Fighter, I guess too.
Yeah,
I forgot Street Fighter.
Yeah, that was recent. Good for you.
I
Greg.
can't miss. You know what I mean, guys?
Greg has been doing. He's projected to come in second. The projections are bullshit, so it's like
Yeah,
you
the
can't really
game
look at those,
doesn't know
but
what it's doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't have any.
I'm so
clue
mad
what's
about
going
the
on.
last case of Benedict Fox. Get
I'm
your
so
shit together,
happy about
Xbox.
that. I'm so happy about that because I called that shit like crazy, and like you just didn't. I mean, it's like I tagged you in my vlogs or something or my fucking.
Yeah, I was
videos.
gonna say I don't remember you mentioning this.
No, because so you can on my stream, I streamed Steam Next Fest, like the original one, like the one fucking few months ago, and I played that game, and I was like, this game is not good, and I was like, I think I might have clipped it out somewhere and sent it to you. And yes, I was like, this game kind of sucks. And then so when it got you negative points, I was like, hell yeah.
Well, the thing is, I saw it and I asked Mike because I think Mike either went to a preview or like I asked him what the streets were saying.
Before I played it, I was excited for it. So maybe Mike didn't.
But
he was like still in that.
I know what Mike is referring to here of Xbox after their like whole big January like developer direct thing. They did a separate stream where they showed last case of Benedict Fox of like 10 minutes of gameplay, and I remember talking to him after that, and I think it was conversation close to when he talked to you, Bless, and he told me, it looks all right.
Oh, come Mike.
Wow.
Somebody bring me like Mike. What the
He's
fuck?
playing the mind games.
God
with
damn
bro.
it!
You fell for it. Hook, line, and sinker.
Mike's like a
Jabroni.
wild card though, because in general, I'm like, I
He
don't
was just
know
trying
what
to
he's
hype
gonna
me up
do.
for no reason.
But also
What
at
he's
the
gonna be
same
bidding
time,
on.
he was also giving one of our guest hosts this week. I forget if it might have been Jerica. The advice of
Just
Greg was
lie.
just lie,
Yeah.
and like tell people different things, and that's just who Mike is, you know.
God, I can't trust a word that man says. Because I'm pretty sure like he wasn't thinking about the fantasy draft when I asked him how what are the streets saying about last case of Benedict Fox. He was just trying to share the hype, even though there was no hype. I just wanted to know in case I needed to bid for this thing, and he tricked me.
Ladies and gentlemen, that's another episode of P.S. I Love You XOXO. We're your PlayStation podcast that posts each and every week on youtube.com/kindafunnygames and podcast services around the globe. If you like the show, head on over to patreon.com/kindafunny, where you could keep all of us independent and employed. Of course, you could also get the shows ad-free. You could watch us record the podcast live as we record them, along with all the other Kinda Funny podcasts we do. Of course, you could then get a bevy of bonus content, literally hundreds of episodes if you've never supported us before that are only available on patreon.com/kindafunny. No matter what, though, thank you for watching and listening. Until next time, it's been our pleasure to serve you.